Tim, if you don't mind, tell me a little bit about your business, Omnicruit.
All right. Well, Omnicruit is a bunch of recruiters who decided to get together and start working for ourselves. Me and my other two partners, we have about 78 years of recruiting experience, and of that, about 50 years of international experience, primarily in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. We recruit nurses. There's upwards of 1 million nurse shortage up to through 2030. And we're finding that the market, the niche, the pool of candidates is internationally versus the United States.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. How did you first get involved with international recruiting and learning that hey, there's a lot of nurses international?
Well, this is going to be very hard to believe. It was me answering a monster.com ad back in 2003 or 4. And that was to work for an Army contractor in Kuwait. And, I went to work on that contract for a year, left my family in Nashville, Tennessee. And 12 years later, here I am finally leaving.
Okay, so wow. Well, first of all, thanks for doing that. I mean, thanks for that. It's serving. I'm actually retired Army, so I know how important it is to have civilians there on the battlefield or close to the battlefield as well. So thank you very much for that. So you've been doing this for a long time, but how long have you been doing it for yourself?
Well, we started, we had the idea as far back as 2007, right? So we kicked it around, we did our research and study and realized that the H-1B problem was insurmountable. And so back in 2020, we were watching the political climate, thought that there would be a second Trump administration, and those immigration rules that required merit-based visas. And we saw some legislation in the Senate that pertained to nurses having a special category of visas that will be carved out from the H-1Bs. And so we thought, 2021 should be our launch time, so let's get started. And so we did launch, even though the election didn't turn out the way we thought it would be. We still thought there was opportunity with the legislation in Congress that didn't materialize. And so we took 2021 to get our LLC established. And we built the structure, we built infrastructure of talent and an infrastructure of an organization, and really started to sandbag, so to speak, all of our talent. So now we're structurally sound. We have our nurses gathered up and vetted and interviewed and just ready to be presented to our clients.
Okay, so so you have kind of like two streams here. You have the nurses, right, that you need to place, and you have the clients where you need to place them. So when we talk about who you serve, who your best customer is, your target market, who is it you're focusing on?
Well, so we are focusing in two geographic areas. One is Hampton Roads, Virginia, and the other is Houston, Texas. We are targeting the major hospital centers in these areas. Centera is the biggest boy on the block. We're targeting them, as well as Bon Secours, Riverside, and Inova up in Northern Virginia. Additionally, in Texas, we're focusing on some of the teaching hospitals along with the Methodist and Baptist hospital systems.
Okay, great. So you're working direct contracts with these hospitals, not going through any vendor company or anything?
No. And so we're a startup and we are pre-revenue. And, our game plan, our strategy is go directly to the decision makers in those hospital systems.
What are some of the biggest issues you've had to overcome, either in your business or in the industry? And you kind of mentioned one about, the visas, but what's the biggest issues?
Yeah, well, of course, we're a startup, we're a nobody, and we're walking into an industry of titans, right? And our competition, these are multi-million-dollar operations that have a relationship, and they have a reputation that they can walk into front doors of these major hospital systems and get attention. Our biggest hurdle right now is getting traction, and it's getting the attention of those decision makers. We come with the credentials, We
Mhm.
have a pool of qualified nurses that are master's degrees and bachelor's degree. We come with many, many decades of experience in both recruiting and international recruiting. And me and the partners and most of the team, we've all lived an expat life and we've all lived overseas. And so we come with a very unique qualification that our competitors don't. We've looked at them. You know, our competitors, they may have an office or two overseas, but none of their overseas workers have ever worked in the United States, so can't relate to the nurses that they're recruiting.
Yeah.
And likewise with their staff here in the US, they can't relate to those overseas employees. So we have a very unique qualification, but it's hard to get our clients or potential clients to understand, and that's what's not allowing us to get that traction.
Okay, yeah. So it's really portraying and telling the story to them on the unique niche that you have, right? Being able to effectively do that. So so what's been the biggest learning for you as you transition from employee to employer?
Well, I've always served in roles of leadership. I've always led multinational teams. I've always led very large teams. So the last 12, 13 years, I've led these teams. I think the transition for me, and you know, I guess most people would say working from home, but I've been working remotely for the last 3 years. So I have been learning to work remote, and it's sometimes it's very hard to put on a suit of clothes, a shirt and tie, and get out of my flip flops and short pants. But you know, time management is not a problem. I think the cold calling, you know, understanding that if I don't make that call, if I don't make that connection, if I don't sign that contract, my family, my team won't eat.
Yeah, yeah, so that's a good point. And some people hate doing that, right?
Yeah.
You got to do the necessary evils to get to where you want to go. It's funny you talk about working from home and things, because you can get into that mindset where you're working from home and you end up, okay, I'm just going to throw a load of laundry in, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and you're getting up. I was talking with a coworker, and he had told me, it's like, you have to make it like your office. So like you get up, dressed. He even said, walks out the back door, goes around the house and walks in the front door to come into the office, you know? So it's like you're putting that mindset in so that you're there, you know, and present in the job. So, so Tim, what have you learned about yourself as you transition into entrepreneurship?
A lot of people, especially my family, they say, "Oh, Tim, you're working so hard, you're working too much." And I'm looking at them and I'm saying, no, I'm not. You know, so I do go through a routine. I do have to get up. I do have to shower. I do have to shave. I do have to put on the shirt. I put on the jacket, and I do sit down at the desk and get a cup of coffee and do perform a routine of business, of office work. But I think I'm learning that no matter how hard you think you work, you're not working hard enough.
Yeah.
And so I'm just driven to do more.
Yeah, especially, you know, as a beginning of the startup, you're doing multiple jobs typically, you know, and a lot of people don't realize, they think they're going to start a business and they're going to work less and make more. And it's just the opposite typically until you get that structure down. So what's the future look like for Omnicruits? I know you're just getting started, but what's the future look like? What are some of the goals, and what do you see as the main challenges moving forward, you know, other than the one you mentioned before?
Well, we've vetted. We have a pool of over 250 nurses. We've vetted over 30, maybe close to 40 now, that are qualified and ready to mobilize to the United States. So goal number one is to get this first batch of nurses placed. We want to break it up into 2 batches, a batch of 15 this year, a batch of 15 in Q1 and Q2, and then barrel into Q1 with a series of international recruiting trips so that we can cast a very wide net in West Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and refill that pool of nurses. So, you know, I think that's our most immediate goal. You know, let's get these nurses placed first, and then let's go ahead and cast a very wide net with some very aggressive recruiting and get the pipeline refilled.
Okay, yeah, that's a great strategy. You said you're focusing on Hampton Roads area, and you mentioned Nova up in Northern Virginia. and also Houston, Texas. Is there a plan to go larger than that? Or are you just focusing on that because of the type of population and stuff there? Or
It's geographic, right? We have various connections at Centera, so that we thought that was a natural, organic place to start. But as we're walking along this journey, we're discovering that we're getting tapped on the shoulder by other metropolitan areas in Houston. So we have a client now that wants more nurses to go outside of the Houston area and want nurses to go into the Miami area. We're looking at clients in South Carolina as well. Now, strategically, we've discovered that it's going to make a whole lot of sense not to purely focus on the United States for the nursing problem, because Canada, our neighbor to the north, has the very same problem. And so as we run into immigration problems here with certain batches of nurses, we push them up north where there's less of a qualification for immigration. Further to that, we're going to expand into Saudi Arabia in year number 3, as they're starting to build these new cities like Neom and the Red Sea Resort projects, where they're building new cities that's going to make Dubai look like villages. And so with those communities, with those cities come dozens of hospitals per city. And so our scope, our reach is more international as we look outside of the US, as we look to overcome the hurdles of immigration in the United States.
yeah, wow, there's a lot of opportunity there, it seems like, for you, and
Yeah.
you guys got a great plan to get there. So one more question: what advice would you give to anybody thinking of going into business?
Do a lot of homework first. Make sure that you have a rock solid business plan. Make sure that you do proper market research. Have several professionals look at your business plans first. Save 6 to 12 months of salary, and then absolutely go for it.
Great, that is really sound advice, especially about the salary piece, because people don't always consider their operational costs to include paying themselves. So
That's right.
Live, right? So great. That's great advice, Tim. So Tim, that wraps up the interview. Nice job. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
your time today.